Well, welcome to the 700 Club. No peace for Passover in Israel. Hezbollah and the IDF exchanged attacks in the north, while down in Gaza, Israeli forces continue preparations for the push against Rafah.
Well, here at home, a bill to send more aid to the Jewish state is on its way to the president's desk. Meanwhile, anti-Israel protests on college campuses continue to spread. CBN's Julie Stahl reports.
While Congress has approved another $26 billion in aid to Israel, pro-Palestinian protests are cropping up on campuses across America. Since they began at New York's Columbia University last week, the demonstrations have spread to schools from coast to coast, some becoming violent. In Cal Polytech in Humboldt, students pushed and screamed at police. At Columbia, Mayor Adams warned of outside agitators stirring up violence. The school has shut down on-campus classes, and Jewish students say they fear for their safety.
I'd say the majority of my friends, especially Jewish friends, feel a sense of insecurity at this time.
Speaking to CBN's Gary Lane, the former spokeswoman for the Department of Education during the Trump years had this advice.
The schools 100% need to make clear to their students and their faculty that anti-Semitic hate will not be tolerated. They, quite frankly, should stop admitting people who openly sympathize with terror groups. I think that is a great step one. But in the immediate time right now, these schools need to take an absolute stand that they will protect their Jewish students and they will keep learning going.
There are calls for Columbia's president to resign, and House Speaker Mike Johnson is expected to hold a press conference at the campus today. President Biden spoke out against the protests, but he also criticized those who aren't pro-Palestinian.
I condemn the anti-Semitic protests. That's why I've set up a program to deal with that. I also condemn those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians.
In Israel, the fighting didn't stop for the Passover holiday as the IDF and Hezbollah terrorists exchanged strikes. 2 reserve brigades have been mobilized for what's expected to be the push into Rafah in Gaza, the last Hamas stronghold. Many Israelis set an empty space at their Seder tables for the hostages and said a prayer for their return. Psychologist Naomi Moore, who works with the hostage families, told CBN News this war has taken many back to the Holocaust.
Some grandparents have actually experienced the Holocaust and they feel that it's happening again. And others that haven't experienced it but know about it, and we all know. So it reminds people of being neglected, being alone.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, we vowed never again, and on our watch, never again. Let it not happen here in the United States, in Europe, or anywhere in the world. Jews should always be able to live free and be able to practice their religion however they see fit. In the words of George Washington, this isn't toleration, this is equality. And they need to have it, and it needs to be established, especially on our college campuses. Well, in other news, when Arab nations joined coalition forces to help Israel defend itself against Iran, well, it signaled a potential sea change in Middle East politics. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. Mideast experts tell CBN News it took years of work breaking down regional barriers for nations like Saudi Arabia and Jordan to come to the aid of the Jewish state. CBN national security correspondent Caitlin Burke shows us what this informal coalition could mean for the Middle East moving forward.
For decades, efforts to create peace between Arab countries and Israel made very little progress until 2020, when the Trump administration brokered the Abraham Accords. That agreement helped normalize diplomatic relations, first between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, then eventually with Sudan and Morocco.
That is one of the most gratifying things that has happened during the Biden administration, is how the Abraham Accords have endured.
Victoria Coates, a former deputy national security advisor to President Trump, played an initial role in negotiations for the agreement. She says it passed a true test when Arab nations joined the West in responding to Iran's attack, marking a seismic shift in the region.
The action out of Iran was unprecedented to just attack Israel directly, and so was the Arab response. But I think most notably in there is Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis came out and publicly confirmed that they had shot down an Iranian projectile that entered their airspace.
Iraq, Jordan, the UAE, and Egypt all joined Saudi Arabia in providing critical intelligence, support, and cooperation.
They realized that if you're going to be in what increasingly is a regional struggle with Iran, you could not have a better friend than Israel. And, that was the kind of realization that set in over the course of 2019 that led to the Abraham Accords, and that I think we saw on full display last weekend.
Coates says there's tremendous potential for the alliance to strengthen, especially if Saudi Arabia enters a formal agreement with Israel.
There was talk earlier this year of potentially getting to a Saudi deal that was derailed, I think perhaps not coincidentally, by October 7th. But that deal is still possible in the future because it's highly unlikely UAE and Bahrain would have entered into those kinds of deals with Israel without Saudi support.
She believes the largest barrier is U.S. insistence that Israel comes to a deal with the Palestinians as a prerequisite.
That's not a Saudi point at this point. That's the Biden administration insisting on that. And that's kind of a poison pill now after October 7th, because there's no way Israel's going to reward the Palestinians for what happened with any kind of a state.
With this weekend's measured response by Israel to Iran's attack, many experts believe the Jewish state took another step in strengthening ties with its Arab neighbors. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. Now to more on the foreign aid bill we mentioned earlier. In addition to the $26 billion for Israel and Gaza, it also provides $61 billion for Ukraine's defense against Russia. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer calling it one of the most important measures passed in recent times.
I'm very proud of what has happened. We tell our allies, we stand with you. We tell our adversaries, don't mess with us. We tell the world we will do everything to defend democracy and our way of life.
The aid is expected to begin flowing to Ukraine as soon as this week to help in its war with Russia. The law also includes a potential ban on the popular app TikTok. It requires TikTok's Chinese-owned parent company, ByteDance, to sell the platform within a year. If that doesn't happen, Americans won't be able to download or update the app. Well, a Florida law allowing religious chaplains in public schools is facing challenges on multiple fronts. Governor Ron DeSantis signed the law that says volunteer chaplains can serve as counselors for students who request one. The American Civil Liberties Union claims it's unconstitutional and they'll take the case to court. However, one group that supports the new law might be a bigger problem for the governor. Representatives of the Satanic Temple say they'll put their own chaplains in schools. Governor DeSantis says the group is not a religion and won't be allowed to take part. Well, public school teachers are limited in what they can say about the creation of the universe. That includes steering clear of intelligent design because of potential ties to the Bible. As CBN's Wendy Griffith reports, one West Virginia high school student helped craft a law that allows teachers to discuss those concepts.
2 years ago, 16-year-old West Virginia high school student Hayden Hodge decided to help his teachers increase the scientific theories they could include in lessons on how the world came to be. While Big Bang and evolution made the list, the theory that perhaps God created all of this, the universe and humanity supernaturally, did not.
So I think a lot of it was fear. They were just afraid of if a student asked a question like that and they answered it truthfully, then they were afraid of, anything that could happen to them with their jobs or in their personal life or anything like that. And, like I said, with that science teacher, he was afraid to even, have conversations like that. And I thought this needs to change. He needs to feel like he can talk about this without any fear of losing his job.
With the help of his father, Tony, and some West Virginia lawmakers, Hayden drafted a bill that would allow teachers to include discussion of intelligent design.
Hayden he spearheaded this himself. I mean, he came to me and asked for my advice. Dad, how can we do this or whatever? And I just kind of gave him a little bit of advice. I said, but if you want to do it, you need to be the one to head it up. And so he sat down and did research, and he ended up working on the language himself and talked to the senator that represents our district and went to her, she happens to be the chair of the education committee, Senator Amy Grady. He took it to her, and from there, the ball just kept rolling, and we're really proud of him and all of his efforts.
Due to political pushback, they agreed to take the phrase intelligent design out of the bill, although it still allows West Virginia public school teachers to discuss it in the classroom.
A majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed.
Some senators saw it as the easiest vote they cast all year.
You have to understand, in West Virginia, this is a God-fearing state. The people here love the Lord, they love God, they love Jesus. And when people have things like this presented before them, they put God first in their lives. And the same goes for our legislators in this building behind me.
Governor Jim Justice, an outspoken Christian, signed it into law in March.
Anyone that denies God's presence is just not looking and just absolutely not with it. And so for our teachers to be able to teach the foundation of all of our lives, well, why wouldn't they teach it? We can teach about evolution or teach Big Bang or whatever it may be. The reason would only tell you, well, of course we've got to teach intelligent design. We're blessed to have a wonderful young man that brought it to our attention.
Hayden vividly remembers the day it passed the Senate.
It felt fantastic. I remember being up in the gallery, and the second that it passed overwhelmingly, I got super excited. I remember giving my dad a high five, and that was just one of the coolest things ever. I looked over at my mom, and she was kind of smiling and kind of crying at the same time, so it was really fun.
While Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee have similar legislation, Governor Justice hopes West Virginia's version will help encourage other states to follow suit.
If we're the first in West Virginia to do this, it'll spread all across the land. You wait and see.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Charleston, West Virginia.
Hayden showing some initiative and boldness in his faith. Gordon?
Let me underline just how impossible this is to see citizen legislation. I remember talking to some people in the Senate and House of Delegates right here in the state of Virginia. You know, how can we start moving legislation forward? And they absolutely discouraged any kind of citizen-sponsored legislation. They said, well, it has to go through a special group. We have a special group at the Capitol that drafts legislation, and they research and make sure it doesn't conflict with anything currently on the books. And you know, it's got to go through that process. And to see a high school student in West Virginia successfully get a bill through, that is absolutely incredible. So you go, Hayden. For anyone who wants to debate this, I remind you, please look at the science and start asking questions. Why does our very appearance, if you look in the mirror, why does your face obey mathematical equations? Why does it adhere to the golden mean? Is mutation, genetic mutation, random, or is there a mathematical process to it? Can you explain consciousness? Can you explain concepts like hope and charity? Those things, you look at this sort of materialistic view of the universe and existence. Well, those things don't fit within that model. And so because it doesn't fit, we all have to remind ourselves evolution is still a theory, and any theory needs to be questioned. And until it holds up to science and the scientific method, we have to keep it in the theory realm. And you can't have it be dogma and say, well, this is the only way to view the universe. There are lots of different ways to do it. I like to argue, well, we're arguing about the method of creation. It's not, you can't remove a creator from your equation, and that is fundamental. And if you get into the Big Bang, what was there before? And if there is a Big Bang that started everything, well, then there has to be a creator. That's my view. I'm not going to impose that view on others, but you can't exclude that view from any serious intellectual discussion. These things have to be debated, and that is part of the scientific method. So I applaud Hayden. It's congratulations. This is a wonderful thing.